and welcome to ESF Connected. I'm Kate Walker. On today's show, we are going to dive into green purchasing. ESF is embarking on a pilot program to increase green purchasing institution-wide, and as we develop and evolve this program, our efforts will become a case study for other institutions in New York State, across New York State, to emulate. Green purchasing is one of the 6 activities that frame the mission of the Center for Sustainable Materials Management here at ESF. Joining me today on ESF Connected is Sue Fassler. She's the Sustainable Facilities Manager here on campus, and Sue is one of the collaborators on this green purchasing program. And I'm so glad that she's joining us today to talk about this exciting and game-changing project. Sue, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
Great. I know I'm every time we chat, I learn a little bit from you, so I'm really excited to learn a little bit more today. Before we dive in, I am going to talk a little bit about the center just to frame the conversation. I have done some shows here on ESF Connected introducing the center, which is a program, a center that started in September of 2020. So feels still brand new, but we're actually starting our 3rd year here in our contract of 5 years, which we are funded now for 5, but with a possibility for a 5-year extension of a $5.75 million grant that was administered through the Department of Environmental Conservation. So that funding that comes through the state is actually coming through the Environmental Protection Fund, and we don't do this alone. We're actually partnering with, we have a sub-award with Syracuse University, our neighborhood partner, and we've been working with them as well as 3 other universities across the state. So we have coverage regionally with our partners in University of Buffalo, Alfred University, and SUNY Stony Brook. The Sustainable Materials Management Center is definitely focused on looking at that waste hierarchy, and our mission is to collectively challenge that idea of waste. And so when you look at the waste hierarchy, it's right there on your screen. Our goal is really to focus on the top of that hierarchy, looking at reducing, reusing, and recycling right there underneath. And we've talked a lot about those efforts. One of the main things that we're doing is looking at waste prevention and product stewardship, so potential legislative solutions, and looking at things like EPR to really look at how do we actually reduce waste before it occurs. We want to stay away from that bottom of that hierarchy, which is landfill. So here on campus, we're doing research to develop both composting options as well as conversion options for items that are not recyclable fibrous materials. So that is like a wax-coated cardboard, things that are difficult to be recycled in a typical standard recycling facility. So we're doing that research here. And so those are the key priorities. Today we're going to be talking about purchasing, and I'm very excited, like I said, Sue, to be chatting with you about this responsible purchasing, this closed-loop responsible purchasing, really utilizing the ESF experience as a pilot here. And you've been on campus, you've been kind of working these angles, trying to figure out how to do this better here on campus for many years now. And I'd love to know what rules currently, right now, what is ESF doing currently to follow green purchasing guidelines? Do we have anything in place right now?
Yep, so that is a great question. Every state agency in New York State actually has to follow Executive Order 4, or EO4, the Green New York Purchasing Standards. So this is what the homepage looks like if you go to OGS's website. And Green New York, as I mentioned, it's a purchasing requirement for state agencies that is basically established to create a green procurement system. There are over 60 Green New York specs within these requirements. So this is just a small smattering. So for example, there are specifications outlining what a green commercial clothes washer looks like, or what a green AAA and AA battery is. There are over 60 of these specs, and they dig into the definitions, the background as to why green purchasing matters, and they also tell you what you need to look for in a specific item. So something like an ink cartridge or toner for your printer, you want to find something that is remanufactured or something that has recycled content in it. So these specs are basically the foundational framework for a green purchased product. And then it's up to each individual state agency to then do that research and find the products that fit within those specs. So ESF is required by state mandate to do this, but as we're going to talk to in a little bit more detail later, that takes a lot of time and effort. So it's not an easy thing to do.
Okay, that was my first question. So anyone can go onto this website right now, the one you just posted, anyone can go on there and search for those items. Is it fairly easy to find?
Yes, yep. So if you just Google green New York specs, EO4, that'll come right up. And yeah, the list of those specs is right on OGS's website. They are very easy to find and very easy to use in terms of there's just so much information there.
Okay, so but if someone was trying to find that out, a purchaser, for example, here on campus, they would have to go item by item, right, and search for those specifications.
Yes,
Is that how it works now?
So right now, I would say that we still have a lot of work that could be done with outreach about the specs on our own campus. And I would hazard a guess and say the same issue exists replicated throughout the state. So some people might know that these specs exist. We do have to do some state reporting on them each year, but I don't think it's really pervasively known on campus. Even if they are known, it usually does take kind of more constant and continual reinforcement to break some of maybe the old habits of not referring to these specs when purchasing. And ESF, like so many other institutions, we all have so much on our plates, a lot of great things on our plates. And to take a pause and a moment out of your day to purchase something that isn't familiar to you, to do a bunch of research on that, that is a rather daunting task. So that's something here with this pilot program working through the center, we're trying to take that difficult and lengthy research out of the hands of the purchasers and create something that's very easy for them to use.
Okay, so what was the first step? What did you do first to make this easier?
So the first thing we did was we worked with the business office. And when I say we, I have to give so much credit to our student sustainability coordinators, Delaney Demro, Dan Ricci, and our newest sustainability coordinator, Natasha Abrol. So we got together with the business office and asked them, how do we go about finding what we spend the most money on in a normal year, so a non-COVID year? So we went to the year preceding the pandemic, and the business office reached out to our top 10 vendors by spend, and they were able to give us every single purchase we made throughout that year. So the students then categorized these expenditures into various categories, which we'll mention when we talk about the guide, and then they really combed through the Green New York purchasing specs to say, what items do we most continually purchase that we should and could be using these specs to ensure that we're purchasing green products. So we really looked at what our standard state is and looked at how can we make a guide that really speaks to the products we're using on campus and isn't just a bunch of things that are good in theory to purchase green, but we don't actually use on campus. So we wanted to make it really practical and immediately impactful.
Incredible. Well, and thank you to those students. That's awesome and so great that they were able to help out. All of this is so critical. It's not done without student help. So appreciate them and thank you. So how where do we go from here then? So if we have this guide, but what is being done here on campus? Is there I think there's a policy that's in place, or it's going to be in place?
So we will have a policy in place. It's with our executive leadership right now. Some professors on campus help to develop it as well as some of our operations staff. And it's basically going to be used as an educational tool to really kind of codify the state mandates that we should already be following. So basically the policy will say anything consumable or durable or electronic that is purchased on campus must abide by the Green New York specs as such they exist. So as we mentioned, there's only, in air quotes about, it's still a lot, but there's only 60 specs for green products. So for those 60 products that we buy on campus, they must follow the Green New York specs. If there isn't a spec written for a product like this, ESF has created its own green specs, which really first and foremost do promote reuse, really rethink, do we need to purchase this? If we do, can we find something with recycled content, something that's made locally? And then we do have to talk about, of course, the purchasing hierarchy as well, because aside from abiding by Green New York standards, we also have to abide by a very specific purchasing hierarchy because we are a state institution.
Okay. So it sounds like the policy will come out in the next couple of months. and then you have created this guide. Do you have anything to show us what this guide looked like? Is it ready for public viewing yet, or?
We do have some screenshots for a sneak peek, but
Okay.
before we go into the guide, because
Okay.
this is context, I really would love to throw up a slide to talk about this purchasing hierarchy,
Sure.
because the guide does capture that as well.
Great, love to see it.
Perfect. So this is the state agency purchasing hierarchy. So remember, we have to purchase Green New York. We have to follow those specs. However, we also have to follow New York State procurement guidelines and New York State finance law. So this first means that when we're looking for a product, any product, we have to first look at what is known as a preferred source. And those preferred source vendors can be seen on the slide in parentheses. If a preferred source doesn't have this commodity, we then go to OGS centralized contracts. If OGS doesn't have something on contract, then we go to SUNY and other state agency contracts, and only if we've exhausted all three of those options can we then go to the open market. So that means we could buy any old product from any old organization only after we go through those three steps. So you can see it's a rather tedious and time-consuming process. These regulations are here for a reason, and we do want to always try to purchase from MWBE, so that's minority and women owned business enterprises, and also service disabled veteran owned businesses. So as much as we can, we want to use our state purchasing power to do good within our state.
Great. So this is a great reminder to the purchasers, because most of the folks that are purchasing these things have been in place for many years. These are not new, but this will be an opportunity to just kind of share this information out, do outreach again to say this is best practice. This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point of the policy and this guide, is to reinvigorate what we probably should, or probably have been and should have been doing for the past many, many years. But as I mentioned before, it takes a lot of energy and effort to abide by these regulations. So we want to be giving people a tool, which I'm happy to share some slides now to show some screenshots of our guide. So again, all credit goes to our students. This project would not exist without them. So you're looking at the first few pages of the guide. This guide on the second page does give an overview of that purchasing hierarchy. So anyone who isn't familiar with this, within the first few pages of the guide, it explains it to them in a really nice color-coded, easy-to-understand way. And then the table of content showcases the areas of product commodities that the guide will provide products for. So this is things like office supplies, janitorial supplies, trades and facilities, electronics, so the things that we're really using a lot of and continually purchasing on campus. And the way that this guide really differs from those Green New York specs is that those specs I mentioned have so much information in there. It's a lot of information, but there is not a direct link in those guides to products that you can purchase that actually meets the specs. So again, the onus is on the purchaser to do that research.
Right.
So the guide now, if we go back to the slides, you can see this is an excerpt of the janitorial supplies, for instance. So on the first page of this area, you'll see all of the OGS contracts, the SUNY contracts, and the MWBEs that exist that sell these products. So then in the following pages, you have direct links to things like hydrogen peroxide, general purpose cleaners, all-purpose cleaners, and glass cleaners. So this guide will directly take you to products that meet the Green New York specifications and fall within the purchasing hierarchy. So you can see that golden star at the top, CoreCraft is a preferred source vendor. So as you go down the page in order, you are following that purchasing hierarchy. So at the very end of each section will be those open market and discretionary purchases. So we gave multiple purchase options for each level of the purchasing hierarchy, just in case something is out of stock or back ordered, and also give people some choice, because people like choice. They don't want to be told what they have to buy. So if we can kind of guide people in the direction of the things that meet our policy, but you still have some individual choice within that guide.
This is incredible. You've really taken some of that effort right out for staff that don't know, and to be able to prioritize those environmentally preferred products right out front while still following that hierarchy is incredible. And it looks so easy to use too. Just a little quick click, and it'll be live. So what is, again, remind me of the timing on this, Sue? This is a lot that's just happened in a couple of months. When do you see this going live?
So we really hope start of the new year. January. We should have the guide done by the end of this month, and then we do, and OGS has been so gracious, and the larger Green New York team has been very gracious in providing a review of this document, because as you mentioned earlier, the goal of this is to pilot it at ESF and then scale it and tweak it to be used at other SUNY campuses and other state agencies. So we do want to give them an opportunity to review the final guide. OGS has provided legal review, and they will be doing that again, and that's invaluable, because before we really launch something, we want to make sure it's going to function as intended, and we have all our boxes checked behind the scenes. So then the goal will be launch it in the new year. The business office has already provided me with a list of everyone that has a P card and a credit card, people who do purchasing. So then we'll start to do some more targeted outreach, and I think we'll really see this take off and really pick up speed.
That's really exciting. So knowing you, I'm sure you have a plan for that targeted outreach. Tell me a little bit about what that looks like as you roll this out. You know, it's a new process, a little bit new for folks. So what will that look like on campus, Sue?
Yeah, so I think it'll be something maybe similar to what we're doing today, just a few slides to explain the context, why we're doing what we're doing, why it matters, a little reflection into the future that probably as time goes on, we're going to have to report more and more on our green purchases. And if we're already abiding by regulations and tracking how we're doing that, it's a lot easier to report on rather than, kind of scrambling when the report may be due. And also, we have this great carrot, this great incentive of the guide saying, we're not really asking you to change that much. We're taking research away from you. All you really have to do is click, and the guide will do the work for you. And if products are missing that you find yourself purchasing, let us know. We'll research and we'll add them to the guide. And I should also mention, with that policy that we spoke to earlier, we signed the Post-Landfill Action Network's Break Free from Plastic Pledge right at the beginning of the pandemic. The policy will formalize that pledge. That was a verbal commitment. This policy will really give it some teeth. So we will also, as we're doing this training about the guide, let people know that, hey, here at ESF, we are very, very serious about ridding our campus of single-use plastics that are purchased by state funds. And of course, there are some exemptions for accessibility and for prepackaged food, but we really do want to start getting very serious about, especially events that we have on campus, for example. That's the public face of ESF, and it is possible with a little bit more planning and changing the typical routine to really have a low and zero waste event. And then we hope other people coming to campus will see us doing it and seek to emulate it. And that's something we're really seeing our students and our faculty and staff asking for more guidance this semester than I have ever been asked before about how to go low and zero waste at events. So I think this will be very well received.
Great, yeah. So I heard you say two things there, which is that feedback loop, getting that feedback both with the guide as we roll that out, but also as they learn more about that policy to break free from plastic. And as we roll that out, getting more feedback and questions around, well, then what do I purchase? What am I supposed to buy? And the timing couldn't be better because we know actually January 1, there will be an EPS, which is polystyrene will be banned formally across the state for not only universities but restaurants and other institutions. And so this timing is perfect in that, not that we were using a ton of polystyrene on campus anyway, but that the timing is perfect to kind of coincide with that as well. So Sue, what do you expect? Just one last question, what do you expect the hardest part? This might be a hard question, but the hardest part of this rollout for you, what do you think will it be?
I think the hardest part it's twofold. So one of it is going to need continual education. So here we're a college campus, so every 4 years we have a different group of students coming in, and students will have to abide by this policy too. So it's continually educating. And as we have potential staff turnover, which right now in COVID, that's something that's plaguing the entire country, it's just continually making sure that people know that the guide exists and how to properly use it. But long term, I see one of the largest challenges here is being tracking. So right now through COVID, every purchase that's made has to go through the business office for approval. but it wasn't always that way. So right now we have a really great handle on what we are purchasing right at the moment of purchase as they're looking for approval. That might change in the future, and the systems that we use don't give a lot of data specificity showing exactly what was purchased when someone uses a credit card, for instance. There is a way around that. We'll have to really train people that have a credit card to put in the notes what they purchased when they go to reconcile their credit card. But again, that's another manual task. It's another thing to remember to do. So I think tracking long-term will be an issue, but hopefully the business office will be rolling out a new kind of tracking and purchasing platform in the next year or two. So I think even that difficulty, we'll hopefully see that fade in the future as we upgrade the back end of our systems.
Well, it sounds like you have a plan for both of those things, the education and outreach and the tracking piece, and we'll definitely have you back on to follow up and see how this project is going. I am so thankful that you were able to share a little bit about it today, and I know it'll be successful. We'll be able to share this great work across New York State and the work that the Center for the Sustainable Materials Management is doing. So thank you, Sue, so much. That's all we have for today's show. I want to thank our guest, Sue Fassler, for joining us today. What a great conversation that we had. I'm Kate Walker, and join us again next time on ESF Connected.